Hello, BookTube. We're finishing up our first shelf of the darkest depths of Mordor in this library tour Redux that we're doing. We've been going around the room, book by book, and we got to this recessed hutch in the wall, and the top shelf was where I have stuck most of my mass market paperbacks. All the other mass market paperbacks that I have, you've already seen, because they were earlier in this library tour. And they are double stacked. The ones on the other side of the room, in the bookcases underneath the mantelpiece, are double stacked. So they're all going up here, or they're going. A lot of these books are going. But I was correct. We are able to finish out this top shelf this week. So we're going to take a break from library tour over the weekend. So on Monday, we will commence with the second shelf of The Darkest Depths of Mordor, which is just ordinary books stacked in an ordinary way. So we'll just push on with these final mass markets. And this first one is not even a typical mass market. This is a Barnes & Noble, a little Barnes & Noble reprint volume that they bought of dogs. This is just, who is the author? Jan Artus Bertrand. Just does a whole book full of owners and their dogs. Some of the pictures are absolutely winning. And of course, I had to have this sort of thing, so I just went through here. Of course, when I got this originally, I went straight to Hounds because that's what I had at the time, and that's all I ever imagined having in my life was Hounds. And there's a portrait here. I don't know how quickly I can find it, but there's a portrait of a woman with a basset hound. And it looks like she's throwing out her back. She probably is to have the picture come out just right. Yeah. That was my life for 16 years. Also Beagles for 170,000 years before that. They're the Beagles. Unfortunately, this little volume has no miniature Schnauzer picture. There's a giant Schnauzer picture, but no miniature Schnauzer picture. When I first thumbed my way through this thing years ago, I never imagined in a million years that I would have a terrier. Never in a million years. Okay, what is this next one? Okay, this is a Pelican Classics. Pelican Classics for a long time did books, or for a little while they did books sort of directly parallel to the Penguin Classics line, but not works of literature. More pamphleteers, nonfiction, that sort of stuff. And this one it's edited by J.P. Kenyon, who we've already seen. He's a really good historian. Or was, 100 years ago. And this is the complete works of Lord Halifax, who was, a pamphleteer, a raconteur, a political thinker, and is a fascinating prose stylist. And you'd never get somebody to make a mass market like this today. I'm sure that Lord Halifax, that all of his writings are available for free online. I've never even bothered to look and see. They're well worth. If you're of a social or political literature bent, they're well worth your time to read. But I for the longest time before the internet, I had this, and that's all. Otherwise, I would have had to chance it at a library. Okay, this is the Donald Dudley translation for Mentor Books of the Annals of Tacitus. A pretty good, pretty solid translation of Tacitus with really, really good notes. This old Mentor edition, I have carried it around with me, even though I'm not particularly fond of English language translations. I find they tend to do Tacitus less violence than they sometimes do other Roman authors. But I've carried this around with me. I've consulted it when I didn't have my Loeb Tacitus handy, and I've also taught from it. And it's still, to my mind, the best Tacitus there is. But I don't know if it's available anymore. I don't think Mentor makes books anymore. I could be wrong about that. Okay, all right. This is the classic old Signet Classic line of Shakespeare. They did, Signet, they were in schools and they wanted to be assigned in universities, and they did a whole line of Shakespeare, and they did a really, really good job of it. A great set the author in his time introduction essay that was the same in every book, then a specific introduction to each play, then the play with copious footnotes, and then all sorts of ancillary material at the back to help you set the thing in context, including essays and interpretations. Invaluable to have this thing as a little mass market paperback for all students. And I I used to have them all, of course. I had them all. I had them all. I annotated. God knows where they are. They've all scattered to the winds. The one that I kept was Hamlet. And they're distinctive because they all look like this. And they all have these semi-finished sketch cover illustrations. And they're really, really good. If you are in a used bookstore or a yard sale or something like that, and you see a whole set of these, get them because you couldn't do worse. You should ideally in your library, I think, if it's of your taste, you should have one large anthology of Shakespeare, probably the second edition of the Riverside, the Brown book. But you should also have a shelf of each play individually, because sometimes you only feel like that. Sometimes you want the extra attention of that. And sometimes you don't feel like reading your play sandwiched in between 20 other plays. And that's the reason why I have individual Shakespeare plays all in a row. But I don't have this. I don't have this set anymore. Kind of wish I did, because I haven't known anything later than this to be as good as this for just general reading purposes. The Arden is better for scholarship, but they get a little weighty. They get a little bit of an endeavor to make use of your Arden paperback. But as it is, I only have this one. I only have this mass market of Hamlet. What is this next? Okay, this next one is a bird guide. Just an identifying bird guide. This is the Peterson Field Guide to Birds. One of, in not necessarily in this edition, but in all of its editions, one of the best-selling nonfiction books of all time, the Peterson Field Guide to Birds. This has all your typical birds of North America. It shows you pictures of them and all of their seasonal coatings. There's a big hurdle for novice bird identifiers is that they'll see something and not realize that it can radically change its appearance depending on the season, or depending even on the gender. No idea why I have this. I am never going to go out tramping looking at birds again, so I have no idea why. But anyway, that's been a familiar refrain in this whole thing. Has been, why do I have... Okay. All right, this is Larry McMurtry's novel Moving On in a classic 1970s cover. They just don't make covers like that anymore. I don't know if that's good or bad, but they don't. This is a gigantic epic novel about a woman named Patsy Carpenter. It is, in my opinion, the Anna Karenina to McMurtry's War and Peace, which is Lonesome Dove. He is one of a very small pantheon of authors. Working authors, people who've worked their whole lives, who churn out a novel every season or every other season, who have long bibliographies to their names. He's one, in my opinion, one of very few of those authors who wrote two genuinely great books. Most authors only get one. Most authors have none. But even if an author's gonna write a great book, they usually only write one. And Larry McMurtry wrote two. Lonesome Dove and Moving On are both great American novels, great epics of America. That kind of magic doesn't strike all the time. If you read some of his books, you just wonder where it is. You wonder how on earth could this be the same writer? But with Lonesome Dove and Moving On, it was there. And I kept this because I admit I have a sweet spot for this kind of cover. You will never see this kind of cover again. But not only that, but also, it's going to sound shallow, but these things matter. I have never seen a paperback or hardcover edition of this novel since this cover that I liked as much. And this is still in perfect condition, so I kept it. The last trade paperback of Moving On that I saw was hideous. And also cheaply made. If you open it in the middle, you can hear the two little dots of ink popping off the spine. It's an 800-page novel. You have to make it right. So maybe, I'm only 28, maybe I will live to see Library of America do Lonesome Dove and Moving On in one volume, or maybe I'll live to see Penguin Classics do Larry McMurtry. God almighty, if there's any living author who deserves it. But maybe not. Who knows? Okay. This is an old Victoria Holt historical novel. Some of you will know Victoria Holt. She is awesome. She is absolutely awesome. And scrupulous researcher. She didn't write biographies or histories, but she easily could have. And she doesn't like even a hair or a day to be wrong in any of her historical novels. She always excuses them at the beginning. Usually there's a quick preface saying, I do my best to be a scrupulous researcher, but the story does bend to the drama. I am a novelist, so I will move things around if it helps my story. But it's amazing how seldom she needs to do that. Instead, she just manages to find the drama in the actual events on the page. And this is about the Earl of Leicester. This is about Queen Elizabeth's great favorite, the Earl of Leicester, and the enormous scandal around him at the time, going to court in his best hose and doublet in order to play one of Elizabeth's many crowd of lovers, all pitching woo at her. Oh, you're the fairest. Oh, how I would love to delight in your garden, and all that sort of Elizabethan nonsense, while he had a faithful wife at home. and eventually it got to the point where Leicester was wondering, well, could I be king if I weren't married? I mean, my BS seems to be affecting the Queen more than anybody else's, but I have a wife. It's a fascinating story. I love it. I reread it all the time. What I wouldn't give, I know that that there have been reprints of Victoria Holt and Jean Plaidy and all the faces on that coin. And I don't have them all, and I really wish I did, because I occasionally run across them, and they are good historical fiction. They are immediate reading experiences. Okay, all right. This is the play of 1776. This is Peter Stone and Sherman Edwards. This is the script, and this will have, I imagine this will have pictures. Yeah, this has pictures and the book, as we call it, in theater. This is the book. This is the text that everybody has to go off for the great play 1776, which is all about the Constitutional Convention and the drafting of the Declaration of Independence and the personality rifts that were going throughout. It starts off with John Adams infuriated that Congress won't even put forward the motion to discuss independence. They won't even put it forward. They're just so complacent. He starts out by saying, I've come to the conclusion that one useless man is a disgrace, that two are a law firm, and that three or more constitute a Congress. And by God, I have had this Congress. For 10 years, King George and his Parliament have gulled, cullied, and diddled these colonies with their illegal acts. Stamp Acts, Sugar Acts, Tea Acts, and when we've dared stand up like men, they've stopped our trade, blockaded our ports, burned our towns, and spilled our blood. And still this Congress refuses to grant my motions on independence, even so much as the courtesy of open debate. And later, the next scene, it's the next day, Congress tells him to sit down and shut up. They don't want to hear from him. And the next day, he goes and finds Benjamin Franklin, who's out on a beautiful summer day having his portrait painted. And Franklin tells him that he's being preserved for posterity, and Adams looks at the painting, the painter's not done with it yet, and says, it stinks. And Franklin says, as ever, the soul of tact. Well, the man's no Botticelli, and the subject's no Venus. Anyway, you don't see this anymore. You don't get books for Broadway plays almost ever anymore. Certainly not from a big publisher that would have been in a spinner rack with a whole bunch of other books. It's a testament to how popular 1776 was during the American bicentennial. Okay, all right, we have a double here. We've seen this already. This is Stephen Becker's The Blue-Eyed Shawn. Fantastic novel of an expat roaming through East Asia, and there's all sorts of sociological observation, but there's all sorts of great writing. It's a great adventure story. Not really. I mean, I suppose if you're a publisher today, you would look at something like this and say, well, great adventure stories from days past are a dime a dozen. We can't reprint them all. It's a shame. I wish Stephen Becker were known to the reading public, because this isn't the only great book he wrote. All right. Okay, this is a Penguin classic. Or no, this is just a Penguin mass market. My surly houseboy, about 10 years ago, went to England, just on a trip to England, and asked me, I suppose you want me to get you something. I said, yes, I would like a UK mass market of some book. And I prefer it if it was a book that I liked. And he had no idea what kind of books I like, so he took a wild shot. He got me a few books. And some of them I liked. You could hardly go wrong with Penguin, with books that they're reprinting from the canon. But one of his choices, totally out of the blue, he had no idea how it would please me, was this. Rumpole and the Penge Bungalow Murders. This is after years and years and years and years of John Mortimer in his Rumpole stories having Rumpole refer to the Penge Bungalow Murders. If you consult the relevant volume of notable British crimes, you will find the Penge Bungalow Murders, in which Rumpole brought home a victory alone and without a leader. It was Rumpole's star-making turn at the beginning of his career, solving the Penge Bungalow Murders. We never know anything about them. We hear about it for decades, him referring to it over and over again. But we don't know the story. There is no story. And then late in his career, John Mortimer decided to write a book called Rumpole and the Penge Bungalow Murders and show us what actually happened. And also Rumpole's early courtship with She Who Must Be Obeyed, and all sorts of callbacks to early characters that appear in the early stories of Rumpole and the Bailey and whatnot, but have long since aged out by the time the whole series is over. This was a tremendous goal for my Surly Houseboy. So I've kept this, even though I have it in a hardcover. Okay, all right. Then we have, I've mentioned a couple of times here, the Viking Portable Library series, which is a reprint and extract series that Viking Penguin did before they were Viking Penguin. They were just Viking. They did these handy volumes of Viking Portable Wordsworth, Viking Portable Gibbon, Viking Portable Tolstoy, Viking Portable 19th Century, Viking Portable Poets. And the volumes are largely wonderful, largely due to the editorial climate of the time. The folks involved in putting it all together got the right people to pull these together, to impose what I always mention in these library tours. You can either do this sort of thing just because it's an easy paycheck, or you can impose a vision. You can actually care about it. And most of the people that Viking got to do these did care. And as a result, the books have, I think, permanent value. I wish that they were all reprinted. I'm pretty sure that Penguin Classics would have access to these texts, and for a nominal fee could reprint them with either new covers or use the old covers. The old covers were composites. No one's going to be around to claim them. There were a couple of different kinds of old covers, and I confess I like one better than the other. I'm trying to see if it's within easy reach, but it's not. The cover that I like, the cover design that I like for the second and much expanded run of the Viking Portable Library had a photo, a relevant photo, a medieval castle or whatever, and an inset. A little inset underneath the title, and the inset could be a tiny picture of an author, or a tiny picture of a representative figure from the period. I liked that design a lot better than I liked this. This was the previous design. These weird block illustrations. This is the Viking Portable Roman Reader, which is incredible. It is incredibly good. But what is that? Is that Jor-El from the planet Krypton? That is not a Roman outfit in any way. What is it? What is this weird creature? I have no idea. But I kept it because I don't know where my I've had the Viking Portable Roman Reader in the cover design that I like many times. I have no idea where it is now, or why I got rid of them. I kept this one. I don't know why I got rid of the cover that I liked. But I go back to these. I really do like it. And this next one is the same thing. This is also the blockish cover design. This is the Viking Portable Prescott. What have we got here? This is has Ferdinand and Isabella, the conquest of Mexico, the conquest of Peru, Philip II. These are William Hickling Prescott's. They're all excerpted in here. This is from a time when Prescott's fame as an American historian was only just beginning to fade. So readers of a certain age finding this on their Chautauqua commuter line, finding this in the little bookstore on that platform, would think, Prescott, we read him in school. I remember liking him. And they would get this thing. Prescott now, William Hickling Prescott, is entirely unknown now. He's gone completely. So you could never make a volume like this, although I would argue that this volume might bring him back. The Viking Portable Library has a famous example or two of Viking Portable editions bringing their authors back from the brink. And it would do, readers of history could only benefit from knowing William Hickling Prescott. He is a fantastic historian who's now gone. This is excerpts from a lot of his works. The excerpts aren't really in this book. They aren't really long enough to do more than give you a sense of his tremendous rhetorical style. He's an incredible writer. This will give you the sense of that. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry there aren't like 20 more Viking Portables. That would be great. But that's it. That's all. I have the feeling those are the only 2 or 3 that I have, the ones we've seen here. We saw Johnson and Boswell, the Romans, Prescott, maybe somewhere I have John Bailey's The Viking Portable Tolstoy, but usually not. Usually they're all gone. That's a terrible shame. I think they did 2 volumes of Edward Gibbon. They did The Viking Portable, Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, a really good 1-volume excerpted version of Gibbon's sprawling work. But I think they also did a Viking Portable Gibbon that had also memorable excerpts from The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire and also the entirety of Gibbon's autobiography. And books like that, editions like that. If I find these are one of the few mass market paperbacks that I would actually look for in a used bookstore. When I find them now, I will. I don't know why. I must have sent that whole collection to somebody. I really have to stop doing that. But I'm an evangelist when it comes to books. So if somebody says, oh, I really want that, I just grab it and send it to them. And I don't give any thought to whether or not I want the copy myself. I really need to stop doing that. Okay, and this is it. This finishes up all the mass markets from this top shelf. And this is, believe it or not, a 3rd copy. This is a 3rd copy of Jeremy Levin's novel Creator, about a man who is trying to bring his dead wife back to life by cloning her cells. Basically, that is the technology that's being talked about here. But it's about so much more than that. Medical ethics and the creative process. What do we do with created characters who are constantly nagging at us to do more or to give them more of a life? And also a larger allegorical meditation on religion. Like, for instance, the scientist involved who is trying to make life is what he's trying to do. He's trying to create life. His name is Harry Walper, and in the first page we get his to-do list for the week. Number 1, pull up the shades. Number 2, do the zodiac. Number 3, mop floor, water plants. Number 4, replace light bulbs, outdoor spots, and night lights. Number 5, check incubator, fill bird feeder. Number 6, create life. And if you look at those, and if you look at those daily reminders in order, you'll see that is exactly a mirror of the sequence of events in the book of Genesis. And it just goes on from there. So we are led very strongly to believe that Harry Walper is a stand-in for something else. That makes sense because of the book's title. But I guess I have this 3rd volume because I love it so much, and it's never going to be reprinted, that I grab it whenever I see it, which doesn't really make any sense, except, you're going to have a copy fall apart. So I would probably still do that. If I came across another mass market copy of Creator, I'd probably grab it too, even though it would be my 4th one. And that's it. That is the mass markets from this top shelf. So on Monday, we will recommence the Darkest Depths of Mordor with normal books stacked like this, instead of 80 million like that. How wonderful. But it's not going to last, because the end of Mordor is the bottom shelf is like 4 feet tall, and it doesn't have any shelves, and it's just piles of books. So the order, the calm precession of order is only for the next few installments, maybe all of next week, and then the week after that, it's chaos on the Western Front, just chaos. Anyway, we have a while to go before we get there, so I will see you all on Monday, and we'll recommence. Thank you, BookTube.